Most of what feels like productive work is actually just maintenance work. But because your work environment rewards that behavior, it feels like progress. So much of what you spend your daily working time on is actually just maintaining that status quo. You're not actually pushing you or your organization forward. Hey, I'm Lucian, and I say this as the founder of Gen Now Communications, which I've built up over my decade here in Shanghai, the home of the world's most insane work culture. So here's the scenario. You're operating at a certain level already. Say you're the founder of a small business or you're an executive, and you'll know from experience that you have absolutely no control over your own schedule. And that's because requests come from all sides, not just vertically inside your organization, but also horizontally from clients, partners, vendors, and so on. You just can't control what enters your workday. And in Shanghai, that dynamic is amplified to the max because we don't really use email here. Instead, we use WeChat, meaning there is really no separation between work and life. That means work WeChat messages come in at, say, 10 p.m., 11 p.m., even midnight, and you're still expected to respond because silence is really seen as unprofessional. Remember, this is the home of 996. So sooner or later, your availability and responsiveness become your metric of success. And this reality is what most productivity advice ignores when they tell you to time block or protect your mornings. Later in the video, I'll be showing you how I upgrade that productivity advice. Now, you're not unable to move forward not because you're distracted exactly, but rather because you're so overwhelmed by your role, which, like so many in the modern workspace, is inherently reactive. It means you're constantly fulfilling client requests and not working on growing your own organization. Because in the first couple of years, I wasn't able to grow the organization like I wanted, not just in terms of people, but in terms of workflows and efficiencies. We hit that dreaded agency limbo of 2 clients and 2 staff, and we just couldn't make the leap to the next stage. And it led me to losing a dream client only 3 months into signing them because, quite simply, we didn't have the capacity for them, as I'd never taken that time to step back and grow our internal efficiencies. I was always just stuck in the weeds of being busy. That's when I realized something that changed my understanding of work and helped me grow my company. I realized that work falls generally into 2 categories. The first is maintenance or reactive work, which maintains the status quo and is based on short-term and client needs. This will be things like replies, meetings, admin, client requests, and firefighting. It's necessary and visible, and it gives you immediate feedback. It also never really ends. The second type is progressive work, and this actually pushes you forward as an organization or a person. It's the long tail stuff like staff training, certification, professionalizing your onboarding process for clients, and an actual business strategy. Essentially, progressive work means doing something that makes tomorrow meaningfully easier than today. It's slow and it's hardly ever urgent. Though it seems obvious now, in the first couple of years of running my agency, we were so busy that I just didn't realize we were actually stagnant. And that's why it's so worth verbalizing what I'm saying, because it forces you to sit down and view all your work through these 2 lenses. And now I make it a habit to ask myself these 3 questions. 1, is this task keeping me busy, or is it pushing me forward? 2, is it for the short term or for the long term? And 3, is it for my client or is it for my organization? So now we've got that mindset part settled. Let me share with you how I actually implement this way of thinking into my work. So number 1 is time blocking for progressive work. I treat this work like an appointment. I put it in my calendar and I put it there in the least busy parts of my week. So early mornings, late evenings, or a couple of hours on the weekend. In this time, I put only progressive work because doing progressive work for me, and I know a lot of other people, just does not come naturally. Second is to create deep work zones. These are set times coupled with the time blocking I just mentioned, where I just do not look at any messages at all. This is incredibly effective because so much progressive work is very fragile and suffers a great deal from being interrupted. I'll cover this concept in detail in another video. Number 3 is to delegate processes, not just tasks. Even after 8 years of running my agency, I still struggle with delegating tasks because I have this tendency to think just doing it myself would be much easier and quicker than explaining it to someone. But of course, an hour later, you're still doing that same thing. Particularly non-trusting execs or new founders, it can be quite hard to give over that trust to someone else and delegate not just a task, but a whole process. It honestly took me years to wean off of this habit. Now, if this thinking is so transformative, then you might ask me why it hadn't occurred to me sooner. Well, for the first couple of years, my agency had grown, well, from just me to 3 people, before I'd even realized we'd gone stagnant. And we didn't grow through strategy or planning, but rather luck, momentum, and sheer force of will, which meant endless late nights and sacrifice of health, relationships, and personal growth. But I wrongly interpreted that tiny success as meaning that I was doing things the right way. However, many founders will also tell you that that kind of growth quickly hits a plateau. You know, the classic agency limbo I mentioned above. And you don't even realize it until it's too late, because maintenance work just feels right because you're getting immediate feedback by solving client issues. Now, some of you will be nodding along in agreement, whilst others will be thinking, this guy's a real dummy. How can I keep running the business if I don't do this maintenance work? Well, that's true. And in the short term, you will see some negatives, like being slower to reply to clients, less availability for colleagues, and just generally making people wait. Believe me, as a very agency person where I've been so conditioned into serving clients and replying back in minutes, if not seconds, I felt extraordinarily guilty. But once your mindset about types of work changes and your actions follow through, you'll be much more effective, not just for yourself, but also your organization and your clients. You'll be much less frustrated at all the time you waste. Your clients will love how much more professional you are, and your employee churn will drop right down because they won't feel like they're in an organization that's patched together with sticky tape. So today, just sit down for an hour and write down all the work you have on your plate. Client stuff, the hiring stuff, the accounting stuff, changing the vendor, etc. And divide them into the type of work that is keeping you busy and the type of work that, if you get it done now, will push you forward. Shanghai is littered with agencies that never went beyond 2 or 3 members, as well as middle management who never reached their true potential. And your city probably is too. It may seem fine early on, but I've seen friends stay in this position for years. They got busy, they stayed responsive, but ultimately they also stayed stuck. I hope you found this video useful, and over the course of this channel, I'll be taking founders, executives, and just the plain ambitious to the next level, what I call the operator level. See you next time. Bye-bye.